100 years ago, the world changed forever when Spiritqi returned. As this mysterious energy spread across the planet, it became the foundation of all life. Under its influence, every living creature began to evolve. Some awakened their ancient bloodlines, gaining powerful bodies and incredible physical strength. Others underwent spiritual mutations, developing abilities that allowed them to control and release powerful energy attacks. To adapt to this new era, humanity created countless Spiritqi-related professions. Spirit beast researchers, evolution analysts, material appraisers, and many other specialists became essential members of society. On an ordinary summer morning, a silver-haired young man named Lin Yuan was relaxing on his bed while scrolling through his phone. While browsing an online forum, he came across a question asking what should be done if someone was bitten by a phantom thorn spider. Without hesitation, he typed a response. He advised the person not to panic, to drink plenty of hot water, and to rest in a cool and well-ventilated place. After posting his answer, he put down his phone. At that moment, a furry paw landed on his shoulder. The owner of the paw was a small creature called Smarty, a member of the 100 Questions bee species. Smarty complained about the heat and said the weather was unbearable. Believing that higher places were cooler, he climbed onto Lin Yuan's head. Lin Yuan looked at him helplessly and pointed out that his head was not much higher than the rest of the room. Ignoring the comment, Smarty jumped toward the window and pushed it open. The moment a cool breeze entered the room, he happily stretched his body and relaxed. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan continued taking care of his small spirit creature shop. Although he was only 18 years old, he was already the owner of the store. Unfortunately, he was very different from ordinary people. Since the age of 8, he had completely lost the ability to sense spirit qi. While everyone else could strengthen themselves and nurture powerful spirit beasts using spiritual energy, Lin Yuan could do neither. His body had always been weak, and the world of powerful spirit masters felt like an unreachable dream. As he worked, he examined a healing-type spirit plant called Lily Luyera. The plant was beginning to wilt because of the intense summer heat. Lin Yuan sighed as he adjusted the cloth covering it, but he knew that blocking sunlight alone was not enough. Lily Luyera was already considered one of the weakest healing spirit plants on the market. Its value was so low that even green creeper vines, which are often used as simple fodder, were considered more useful. Since the revival of spirit qi, all spirit creatures have been classified according to grade and quality. Any creature below copper grade was considered low level. Most people were unwilling to invest resources into raising low-grade creatures because higher-grade species had much greater potential. As a result, creatures like Lily Luyera struggled to find buyers. Not long afterward, a cheerful bird flew into the shop carrying a package. The bird was called Een Een, a sound bird that regularly delivered Lin Yuan's medicine. Lin Yuan smiled and thanked her. Even contracting with low-grade spirit creatures like Smarty and Een Een had once left him bedridden for weeks because of his weak constitution. Raising stronger spirit beasts was simply impossible for him. As time passed, the streets outside remained unusually quiet. Business was slow, and not a single customer entered the shop. Smarty stared through the window and wondered if humans enjoyed sleeping all day because the streets looked completely empty. To attract customers, he began loudly advertising the green creeper vines they had for sale. Soon, a little girl walked past the shop with her mother. In her arms was another 100 Questions beast. The moment the creature saw Smarty, it began comparing itself to him. It proudly claimed that Smarty's fur looked dry and messy, and that he was clearly leftover stock nobody wanted to buy. Hearing this instantly angered Smarty. He argued that they belonged to the same species and challenged the other beasts to a competition. Before the argument could become even more ridiculous, Lin Yuan stepped in and stopped them. Since there were still no customers, Lin Yuan decided to close the shop for a while and go for a walk. As they wandered through the nearby streets, Smarty suddenly suggested buying meat. He confidently claimed that eating more braised pork would make him smarter and prevent him from losing future arguments. Lin Yuan could barely hold back his laughter. Trying to comfort Smarty, Een Een pointed out that even if he was not particularly smart, at least he was inexpensive to raise. Unfortunately, that comment only made Smarty feel worse. While they continued walking, Lin Yuan suddenly noticed something unusual near a nearby park. A blunt armored pig was standing alone in the distance. Normally, this species was known for its gentle nature and rarely caused trouble. However, this particular pig looked extremely angry. Before Lin Yuan could react, Smarty's eyes lit up. Looking at the creature, he saw nothing but a giant piece of walking braised pork and immediately charged toward it. Lin Yuan quickly grabbed him and pulled him back. The difference in strength between them was far too great. Fighting the pig would be suicide. As if proving his point, the blunt armored pig let out a furious roar and charged directly at them. The group immediately turned and ran. Lin Yuan pushed himself as hard as he could, but his weak body was reaching its limit. Every breath felt heavier than the last. Suddenly, his foot caught on the ground, and he stumbled. As he fell, he instinctively wrapped his arms around Smarty to protect him. Even though she was clearly frightened, Een flew in front of them to shield her master. For the first time, both spirit beasts stood their ground despite the danger. As the charging pig drew closer, Lin Yuan felt his consciousness fading. Everything around him slowly became dark. Then, in the darkness, he heard a mysterious voice calling his name. When he looked up, he saw a familiar copper bracelet floating before him. His eyes widened in shock. It was the bracelet he had lost 10 years ago. The same bracelet that had disappeared after coming into contact with his blood. The bracelet slowly floated toward him before locking itself around his wrist. A warm energy instantly surged through his body. For the first time in 10 years, Lin Yuan felt Spiritqi flowing within him once again. The sensation was familiar and unforgettable. The ability he had lost as a child had finally returned. When he opened his eyes, the battle was still unfolding before him. At that moment, his left eye suddenly began glowing. A strange screen appeared in his vision, displaying detailed information about the charging beast. The blunt armored pig was named Zai. It was a normal grade spirit beast at level 3 with a defense-oriented attribute and ordinary quality. Lin Yuan's expression immediately changed. Level 3 was far beyond anything Smarty and Een could handle. Neither of them had even reached level 1. Realizing the danger, he quickly shouted instructions and warned Smarty about the pig's next attack. Although Smarty barely managed to dodge, the difference in power was simply too large. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, the bracelet released a brilliant light. The glow spread from Lin Yuan's wrist and enveloped both Smarty and Een. Their bodies began shining brightly as a powerful energy surrounded them. Watching the scene unfold, Lin Yuan could hardly believe his eyes. The bracelet's power was triggering their evolution. Even after Smarty and Een began evolving, Lin Yuan knew their situation was still dangerous. The blunt armored pig was a level 3 spirit beast, while his companions had only just begun growing stronger. The difference in strength was simply too large to overcome through brute force alone. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had already discovered the pig's weakness through the information provided by Mobius. As the furious beast continued charging toward them, Smarty nervously shouted that the walking braised pork was far stronger than he had expected. Een immediately turned to Lin Yuan and asked what they should do next. Remaining calm, Lin Yuan quickly came up with a plan. He told Een to sing as loudly as possible and draw the pig's attention. The melody did not matter. All she needed to do was make enough noise to distract it. Een took a deep breath and gave it everything she had. The result was a painfully off-key performance that would have made anyone cover their ears. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had already endured her singing hundreds of times and was practically immune to it. The blunt armored pig, however, was not so lucky. The strange noise immediately caught its attention and caused it to turn away from Smarty. The pig locked onto Een and began chasing her instead. Realizing she had become the new target, Een panicked and started flying in circles. Lin Yuan quickly instructed her to attack its eyes. If the pig lost its vision, it would no longer be able to pursue them effectively. Een prepared to unleash one of her newly awakened abilities. Spiritual energy gathered around her body, and a bright light began to shine. However, just as she was about to release the attack, the power suddenly faded. She looked confused. The skill that had appeared moments ago seemed impossible to activate now to the worst possible moment. Lin Yuan felt the spiritual power flowing from Mobius begin to run dry. His face became pale as he silently begged the mysterious bracelet to hold on a little longer. As if responding to his request, a small amount of energy surged back into Enyan's body. Without wasting the opportunity, she immediately attacked. Feathers filled with spiritual energy flew forward and covered the pig's eyes. The beast roared in anger and desperately shook its head while trying to remove the obstruction. That was the opening they needed. Smarty rushed forward with all the speed he could muster. Instead of attacking randomly, he aimed directly for the pig's most sensitive area. With perfect timing, he struck its nose. The blunt armored pig let out a painful squeal and immediately turned to retreat. However, while fleeing, its massive body accidentally collided with Smarty and sent him tumbling across the ground. The impact left him completely dizzy. As he struggled to stand, Smarty looked toward Lin Yuan and asked if they had one. Barely remaining conscious, Lin Yuan forced a smile and told him they had done an incredible job. Together, they had successfully driven the beast away. The moment those words left his mouth, his vision darkened and he collapsed. In and Smarty immediately rushed to his side in panic. Meanwhile, the injured blunt armored pig continued running until its path was suddenly blocked by a mysterious figure. The person sitting before was a middle-aged man in a wheelchair. Resting calmly on his lap was a small beast, while a woman stood beside him. The woman immediately noticed a feather stuck on the pig's body. Her eyes widened in surprise because she recognized it as one of Yin's feathers. Realizing something must have happened to Lin Yuan, she quickly told the man that she would leave the pig to him while she went to check on the boy. The man nodded and told her to hurry. As she rushed away, his eyes slowly turned crimson. Borrowing the power of his contracted beast, he prepared to deal with the rampaging pig. While all of this was happening outside, Lin Yuan's consciousness returned to the mysterious space within Mobius. He found himself standing inside the same endless area he had visited before. The surroundings were quiet, and the floating bracelet remained suspended in the center of the space. Lin Yuan had no idea how long he had been wandering there, but he sincerely thanked the bracelet for saving his life and sharing its spiritual power during the battle. As if understanding his gratitude, the bracelet released a gentle glow. Observing his surroundings, Lin Yuan estimated that the space measured roughly 40 to 50 square meters. The size made him wonder whether this was some form of internal dimension possessed by spirit creatures. Curious, he opened Mobius's status screen. The information revealed that Mobius was an unknown spirit creature currently at normal grade and level 1. It possessed both spatial and mystic attributes. Mobius had two abilities. The first was called True Data. This skill allowed it to observe and reveal information hidden beyond normal sight. The second ability was Calm Mind, a passive skill that stabilized the user's spirit and provided resistance against negative mental effects. Lin Yuan was already familiar with the power of True Data. As for Calm Mind, he suspected the skill had developed because he had spent so much time listening to Yin's terrible singing. However, what truly shocked him was Mobius's exclusive trait. Normally, only bronze rank spirit creatures or higher possessed exclusive traits. Yet Mobius had one despite being only a normal grade spirit beast. This discovery made Lin Yuan suspect that Mobius might be a legendary treasure or perhaps even a unique life form unlike anything recorded before. According to its description, Mobius could house spirit creatures inside itself. However, any creature stored within it could not exceed Mobius's own level. Furthermore, Mobius would only gain experience and level up whenever the housed creature became stronger. It could also copy the creature's initial skill, though it would not gain additional abilities through leveling. Most importantly, every time Mobius advanced in rank, the number of spirit creatures it could house would increase by 1. After reading the information carefully, Lin Yuan finally understood the challenge before him. To make Mobius stronger, he first needed to raise ordinary spirit creatures. Only after helping them grow could Mobius advance alongside them. The problem was that raising spirit beasts required enormous amounts of resources. Even wealthy families spent fortunes doing so. As for Lin Yuan, he was practically broke. Still, he chose to remain optimistic. After all, being able to sense spiritual power again was already a miracle. Perhaps this was the opportunity that would finally change his fate. Suddenly, voices echoed through the space. Someone was asking the doctor why Yuan still hadn't awakened despite being unconscious for almost half a day. The doctor calmly explained that Yuan was merely suffering from mental exhaustion and weakness. Yuan instantly recognized the worried voice. It belonged to Annie Jiang. Realizing he was about to wake up, Yuan's consciousness returned to reality. The moment his eyes opened, he was greeted by chaos. Yin was pecking his face while Smarty repeatedly slapped his cheeks. Both spirit beasts were desperately trying to wake him. "I'm Finalizing," Yuan quickly said. The two immediately stopped. Auntie Jiang finally released a sigh of relief. The doctor performed another examination just to be safe. Although Yuan insisted it wasn't necessary, Auntie Jiang refused to listen. After all, He had been unconscious for nearly 10 hours. She scolded him for neglecting his health and reminded him that small illnesses could become serious problems if ignored. Unable to argue, Yuan obediently accepted the checkup. Both Auntie Jiang and Uncle Lee had always treated him and his younger sister like family. Because of that, Yuan decided not to reveal Mobius's existence just yet. As the doctor summoned his spirit beast, information automatically appeared before Yuan's eyes. The creature was called a cleansing Vimbicarp. It belonged to the Spiritqi family and was an elite grade level 4 water-type spirit beast. The carp possessed 2 abilities. The first was Tail Sweep, which allowed it to leap into the air and strike enemies with tremendous force. The second was Cleanse. This rare support skill absorbed mental trauma and soothed abnormal emotional states. Yuan couldn't help but admire it. Elite grade spirit beasts truly possessed extraordinary abilities. After completing the examination, the doctor confirmed that Yuan was perfectly healthy before heading home to have dinner with his wife. Later that evening, Uncle Lee's red and white spirit beast delivered a nutritious meal prepared specifically for Yuan. The meal smelled wonderful. Even Een and Smarty became excited after discovering it contained braised pork. While eating, Yuan's attention shifted toward Uncle Lee's rabbit-like spirit beast. For a long time, he had found it strangely mysterious. Unlike ordinary terror rabbits, this one behaved unusually calmly. Curious, Yuan activated True Data. To his surprise, every piece of information appeared as question marks. Not a single detail could be seen. At that moment, Yuan realized something important. That rabbit was definitely not a terror rabbit. After recovering from his injuries, Yuan resumed his daily training. Every morning, he went jogging to strengthen his body. Even after running for an entire hour each day, he still found the exercise exhausting. Since he lacked a Spiritqi, he had spent years trying to compensate through physical training. Perhaps becoming a combat specialist was unrealistic. Maybe a life profession would suit him better. One day, while returning from his training session, Yuan encountered Uncle Lee and Auntie Jiang carrying baskets filled with freshly purchased vegetables. The couple smiled warmly when they saw him. For Yuan, moments like these felt far more valuable than any treasure. The next morning, Yuan encountered Uncle Lee and Auntie Jiang while they were returning from market. Seeing Yuan already outside, Uncle Lee smiled and asked whether he had gotten up early for another workout. Yuan nodded and replied that he was simply trying to stay healthy. While they chatted, Yuan quietly activated True Data and directed it toward Uncle Lee. The information that appeared instantly shocked him. A strange parasite called the bone-devouring worm was hidden inside Uncle Lee's body. Its origin traced back to a terrifying creature known as the rotting bone silkworm. The creature was estimated to be at least platinum rank, possibly even higher. Its primary attribute was a biological toxin capable of producing powerful mental curses. According to the information, the rotting bone silkworm would burrow deep into a victim's flesh and sacrifice itself to create a horrifying condition known as bone-devouring gangrene. Yuan's expression became serious. Uncle Lee had sealed such a terrifying toxin inside his leg for years without losing control. That alone proved how powerful he truly was. Based on what he knew, Uncle Lee had to be at least a king-grade professional. Yuan quickly reached another conclusion. If Uncle Lee had suffered such severe injuries, then his spirit beast had likely been injured as well. That could explain why the mysterious rabbit-like creature had chosen its current harmless appearance while recovering. One thing was certain. Uncle Lee had been hiding an incredible amount of strength. Before leaving, Uncle Lee and Auntie Jiang reminded Yuan to call them if he ever needed help. Yuan thanked them and assured them that they did not need to worry so much. As he watched them walk away, a thought surfaced in his mind. The couple had cared for him and Xiao Shui for many years. If there was ever a way to heal Uncle Lee's injury, Yuan wanted to find it. After changing into clean clothes, Yuan headed toward his spirit beast shop. The first creature that caught his attention was a green creeper. Yesterday, it had only been a normal quality spirit beast. However, after checking its information today, Yuan was stunned. The green creeper had already evolved. The sudden change made him realize something important. His Spiritqi was constantly leaking spiritual energy into nearby spirit creatures. Those creatures absorbed the energy and gradually improved themselves. To test his theory, Yuan decided to push things even further. Instead of simply allowing the green creeper to evolve naturally, he tried guiding it toward a completely different evolutionary path. A gentle stream of spiritual energy flowed into the creature. Moments later, the green creeper transformed. Its vines shrank away and were replaced by a beautiful plant like Spirit Beast. The evolution had succeeded. The creature had become a Lily Luera. According to true data, it belonged to the Crassulaceae family and the Ionium genus. It was now an elite grade level 1 spirit beast with wood-type attributes. More importantly, it possessed 2 valuable skills. The first skill was Heal, which allowed it to recover external injuries. The second skill was Fragrance, which released a refreshing grassy scent capable of calming emotions and relieving stress. Yuan's eyes lit up with excitement. The creature's value had increased dramatically. A spirit beast like this was worth at least 10 times more than before. Unable to contain his excitement, he immediately called Smarty and Een over. The two happily rushed toward him. Before Yuan could even explain what happened, Een proudly announced some good news. Both of them had leveled up. Yuan quickly checked their status screens. Smarty, the 100 Questions beast, had successfully reached level 2. His species belonged to the sapient cat branch of the Felidae family. He remained a normal grade spirit beast with psychic attributes. His special skill, Precise Memory, had also improved. The ability allowed him to remember every tiny detail with perfect accuracy. Smarty puffed out his chest proudly. Before, I could only remember 1 piece of braised pork, he declared. Now I can remember 30. Yuan nearly laughed out loud. Afterward, he checked Yin's status. The cheerful little bird had advanced to level 3. As a sound bird from the song Lover genus, she specialized in sound-based abilities. To demonstrate her improvement, she immediately began singing. Although her voice was still far from pleasant, there was no denying that her power had increased significantly. Yuan could barely contain his happiness. At that moment, he felt as though he had finally discovered his true golden finger. Getting rich suddenly seemed easy. Then a more frightening realization struck him. This ability was far more valuable than money. Normally, evolving a spirit beast was an extremely difficult process. Most spirit creatures required vast amounts of rare resources, expensive medicines, and specialized knowledge before they even had a chance to evolve. Many creators spent years researching a single evolutionary path. Yet Yuan could seemingly guide evolution with his own power. The significance of such an ability was terrifying. Countless powerful individuals would risk everything to obtain it. As the saying went, the tallest tree attracts the strongest wind. If others discovered his secret, he would immediately become a target. At his current strength, he had no ability to protect himself. Because of that, Yuan made a firm decision. He would never reveal the truth. If he wanted to use this power safely, he needed a disguise. Becoming a creator was the perfect solution. As long as others believed his achievements came from research and talent, nobody would suspect the true source of his abilities. Otherwise, he would simply be inviting disaster. Lost in thought, Yuan failed to notice the phone ringing nearby. Fortunately, Smarty and Een pointed it out. The caller was Xiao Shui. The moment she heard his voice, she immediately asked how he was feeling. Yuan reassured her that he had fully recovered. He even mentioned that he was planning to clean the backyard. The response instantly alarmed her. Without a spirit key, Yuan's physical condition had always been weaker than normal. She quickly told him not to touch the backyard until she returned home. Yuan smiled and explained that it was only a little cleaning. There was no need to worry. Before ending the call, he reminded her about their promise. She needed to focus on her studies and make full use of her talent. Xiao Shui immediately promised that she would. She was determined not to disappoint him. Meanwhile, at school, an important event was approaching. In only 2 days, the students would form contracts with their first spirit creatures. For every future spirit professional, this was one of the most important moments in their lives. The quality and grade of a spirit beast were important, but compatibility was equally crucial. A spirit beast that matched a person's natural affinity could unlock tremendous potential. On the other hand, choosing an incompatible creature could make contract formation extremely difficult and might even damage one's mental strength. The same principle applied to life-type professions. Whether someone became an artisan, a weaver, or a creator, understanding spirit creatures remained essential. Because Xiao Shui's class focused primarily on combat professions, selecting the right companion was especially important. After class ended, the teacher asked Xiao Shui to stay behind. Once the room was empty, the teacher spoke gently. She knew about Xiao Shui's family situation. However, she also knew how extraordinary Xiao Shui's talent was. The Federation's 100 Sun selection was approaching. It was a prestigious opportunity capable of changing a person's future. Because of that, the teacher wanted Xiao Shui to reconsider the spirit beast she planned to contract. Hearing those words, Xiao Shui's expression darkened. Meanwhile, back at home, Yuan finally finished his work. Rows upon rows of lily luiras filled the shop. Over the course of a day, he had successfully upgraded 300 of them into elite-grade spirit beasts. After calculating their value, Yuan estimated that they could be sold for at least 20,000 Federation coins. For the first time in a long while, hope filled his heart. With this money, he could finally buy a high-quality spirit beast for Xiao Shui. No matter what happened, he would make sure she had the best possible start on her journey. Just as Yuan was calculating his next steps, his phone suddenly rang. The number displayed on the screen was unfamiliar. At first, he assumed it was a customer calling about spirit creatures. The timing was actually perfect since he was about to close the shop for the day. He answered the call and politely asked who was speaking. The person on the other end immediately raised her voice. "Are you Xiao Shui's guardian?" Yuan instantly became attentive. The caller introduced herself as one of Xiao Shui's teachers. Without wasting any time, she explained why she had called. According to her, Xiao Shui intended to contract a gray beetle as her first spirit creature. The teacher sounded both frustrated and concerned. In her eyes, such a choice was simply unacceptable. A gray beetle was one of the cheapest spirit creatures available on the market. Most could be purchased for only 200 Federation coins. They were aggressive, difficult to control, and possessed almost no useful skills. Very few people willingly contracted them. In most cases, they were raised only as food for larger insect-eating spirit beasts. The teacher sighed heavily before continuing. "Your sister's talent is exceptional." She explained that Xiao Shui possessed an incredibly rare affinity. Her compatibility covered nearly every defensive type spirit creature. Even throughout the entire Violet Thorn City, only a handful of people had ever displayed such extraordinary potential. Allowing someone with that level of talent to contract a gray beetle would be a complete waste. The teacher firmly requested that Yuan prepare an elite-grade defensive spirit creature for Xiao Shui's first contract. After listening carefully, Yuan thanked her sincerely. He promised that within 2 days, he would provide a suitable spirit creature for Xiao Shui. Once the call ended, the pressure immediately settled on his shoulders. A quality defensive type elite-grade spirit creature would cost at least 100,000 Federation coins. The problem was obvious. He did not have that kind of money. There was only one solution. He had to spend the entire night upgrading green creepers into elite-grade lily luiras and sell them as quickly as possible. Only then would he have enough funds to purchase a top-tier defensive spirit beast. The next morning, Yuan looked like a walking corpse. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, and every muscle in his body ached from continuously transmitting spiritual energy throughout the night. Despite his exhaustion, he felt relieved. He had managed to finish in time. After preparing everything, Yuan headed toward the spirit creature market. Because the market attracted all sorts of people, he took extra precautions. He covered his face and even hid the mysterious bracelet beneath his clothing. Before leaving, he glanced at Smarty. "Are you really coming with me?" Smarty nodded confidently. Of course. Yuan reminded him that a good hunter questions beast should stay home and guard the shop. Unfortunately, that argument no longer worked. Ever since evolving, Smarty had become much more stubborn. In his opinion, haggling was one of the sacred duties of a hunter questions beast. Yuan could only shake his head helplessly. Soon, their transportation arrived. The driver instructed everyone to stand behind the yellow safety line. What pulled the vehicle was not an engine, but a massive horse-like spirit creature. Yuan stared at it curiously. The transportation looked completely different from the vehicles he remembered reading about in old history books. Smarty immediately explained. A century after the revival of Spiritqis, many traditional machines had gradually been replaced by spirit creatures. The driver shouted for everyone to hold on tightly. A moment later, the vehicle shot forward like an arrow. The sudden acceleration nearly threw everyone backward. Smarty lost his balance and almost flew out the window. Fortunately, Yuan grabbed him before disaster struck. The driver laughed loudly. During the journey, he asked whether Yuan was heading to the spirit creature market. When Yuan confirmed it, the driver grinned. "You picked the right day." Curious, Yuan asked why. The driver seemed surprised. "Haven't you watched the news?" A few days earlier, a dimensional rift had opened roughly 30 miles outside Xia County. For 2 days and 2 nights, the Violet Thorn Guards battled waves of aberrant insects that poured from the opening. Although the situation was eventually brought under control, the damage had already been done. The rift had appeared beside a large spirit creature breeding facility. Many creatures had been killed. Many more were injured. To recover some of their losses, surviving employees had begun selling the remaining spirit creatures at heavily discounted prices. Everything suddenly made sense. That explained how the blunt armored pig had escaped. The driver laughed and proudly shared his own experience. A group of blunt armored pigs had escaped during the chaos. He had managed to purchase one for an incredibly low price. By the time it reached the dinner table, his entire family had happily devoured it. The leftovers were even hanging at home to be cured. Yuan couldn't help smiling at the man's enthusiasm. After arriving at the market, he asked to be dropped off near the injured spirit creature section. Critically injured creatures were often sold for a fraction of their normal value. If he was lucky, there might be an opportunity waiting for him there. The moment they entered the market, Smarty puffed out his chest confidently. "Leave the negotiations to me." He immediately asked what kind of spirit creature they were searching for and what their budget was. Yuan explained that he needed an elite-grade defensive-type spirit beast. The target budget was around 100,000 Federation coins. Smarty nearly choked. Their actual savings amounted to less than 20,000. Fortunately, Yuan planned to trade the upgraded Lily Luiras. Even so, the amount of money involved was staggering. As they explored the market, Yuan noticed something strange. Various spirit creatures seemed to react to his presence. Plants, fish, and support-type creatures instinctively leaned toward him. Using his enhanced senses, he could feel waves of attraction and rejection radiating from nearby creatures. The gentler the sensation, the higher the compatibility. Clear pond carps, nether orchids, snow lilies, and 1,000 jade hands all displayed unusual friendliness toward him. Yuan suddenly realized something. His affinity for healing, support, and plant-type spirit creatures was far wider than he had originally believed. Meanwhile, Xiao Shue's affinity lay in defensive types. Their talents complemented each other perfectly. Not long afterward, Smarty proudly dragged Yuan toward a stall. He had already begun negotiating. The seller originally wanted 80,000 coins. Smarty immediately countered with 10,000. After several minutes of intense bargaining, the seller lowered the price to 60,000. Smarty stubbornly refused to go beyond 20,000. The spirit creature being discussed was a tough hide rabbit. It was an elite grade level 1 defensive type spirit beast. Its hardened hide skill allowed it to grow a tough protective layer over its body, greatly reducing incoming damage. Watching the argument unfold, Yuan quickly apologized to the embarrassed seller. Smarty looked deeply offended. He firmly believed he could have secured the rabbit for 20,000 if given more time. Yuan whispered that they should continue looking before making a final decision. Smarty reluctantly agreed. The next creature they examined was a land tortoise. Although defensive by nature, it was only a normal grade level 3 creature. Its signature ability allowed it to enlarge its body and retreat into its shell for protection. The problem was obvious. Its growth potential was too limited. It also moved painfully slowly. Neither Yuan nor Smarty found it suitable. Next came a phantom claw fox. After spending a long time inspecting various defensive spirit creatures, Yuan still hadn't found one that completely satisfied him. Most of the creatures he encountered either lacked sufficient potential or possessed weaknesses that would limit their future growth. Since the spirit beast would become Xiao Shue's first partner, he refused to settle for anything less than the best option available. One of the creatures he examined was a defensive-type beast at elite grade level 1 with normal quality. Its primary skill was Roll Out, an ability that allowed it to curl its body into a tight sphere and move by rolling across the battlefield. While rolling, it could use its hardened shell to absorb incoming attacks and reduce damage. Although the skill was useful for defense, Yuan wasn't particularly impressed. The creature reminded him too much of the rabbit they had considered earlier. Smarty immediately voiced his opinion. According to him, the beast wasn't suitable for Xiao Shui because it was extremely timid. In a dangerous situation, there was a high chance it would become frightened rather than protect its contractor. From Smarty's perspective, they might as well reconsider the tough hide rabbit. Yuan shook his head. Choosing a spirit creature wasn't something that could be rushed. The first contract often influenced a Spiritqi professional's entire future development. A poor decision now could create problems years later. Because of this, he continued searching. Eventually, after visiting stall after stall, he arrived at the final defensive spirit creature available in the area. This one immediately attracted his attention. It belonged to the Caprini ovis species, a coiled horn sheep. The creature possessed elite grade level 7 strength and perfect quality. Unlike many defensive beasts that relied purely on durability, the coiled horned sheep combined defense with surprisingly effective combat abilities. Its first skill was parry. Using its large spiral horns, it could intercept incoming attacks and redirect force away from itself. Its second skill, horn assault, allowed it to charge directly into opponents while using its massive horns as weapons. As Yuan examined the herd more closely, something even more interesting caught his eye. Among the group was a particularly outstanding young sheep. True data immediately revealed information that ordinary buyers could never see. This youngling possessed perfect quality and carried an additional control-type skill. Instead of horn assault, it possessed shockhorn. The ability allowed the creature to release high-frequency vibrations through its horns during impact. Any target struck by the attack would experience temporary paralysis as the vibrations disrupted their body. The combination of defense, offense, and control abilities made the creature exceptionally valuable. Yuan immediately recognized its potential. Without hesitation, he offered 100,000 Federation coins. The seller appeared surprised by the generous offer. However, instead of accepting immediately, he explained that he needed to discuss the matter with his wife before making a final decision. While they waited, Smarty looked at Yuan with confusion. The little fellow had recently spent time researching spirit creature prices online and immediately noticed something strange. According to market value, an ordinary coiled horn sheep cost around 50,000 Federation coins. Even particularly good specimens rarely exceeded 90,000. Offering 100,000 right away seemed excessive. To Smarty, Yuan looked like a wealthy amateur who didn't understand bargaining. Yuan simply laughed. He explained that negotiations weren't always about obtaining the lowest price possible. Sometimes showing sincerity created goodwill and made future discussions easier. In his opinion, Smarty still had much to learn about business. Unfortunately, the seller returned with disappointing news. After discussing the matter, the final asking price became 120,000 Federation coins. Both Yuan and Smarty immediately felt that the seller was trying to take advantage of the situation. The price clearly exceeded the creature's actual value. Still, Yuan couldn't ignore the fact that suitable defensive spirit creatures were becoming increasingly difficult to find. If no better options appeared, he might have no choice but to accept the inflated price. Just as he was considering his options, a loud voice echoed from a nearby stall. A merchant announced that all spirit beast meat had been sold out. Several customers immediately complained. Some pointed toward a group of heavily injured spirit creatures and suggested butchering those as well. The moment Yuan heard the discussion, his attention shifted. His eyes immediately brightened. Seeing his reaction, Smarty misunderstood completely. The little cat immediately assumed Yuan was thinking about food again. He quickly reminded him that this was hardly the appropriate time to be thinking about braised pork. Yuan ignored the complaint. His interest had nothing to do with cooking. Instead, he was curious about the injured spirit creatures themselves. The merchant looked exhausted. After losing so many creatures due to recent disasters, he seemed caught between frustration and helplessness. Even so, he encouraged interested buyers to take a look. Only 3 injured spirit creatures remained. According to him, anyone willing to purchase them would almost certainly earn a profit. Most people quickly lost interest. To ordinary buyers, severely injured spirit creatures represented enormous risk. Treatment required expensive creator services, specialized resources, and considerable time. Many preferred purchasing healthy beasts instead. Yuan, however, walked directly toward the stall. If not for their injuries, these spiders would have reached copper rank before long. Healthy specimens could easily sell for 300,000 Federation coins each through Starnet. Brother Yang nodded in agreement. Support-type spirit creatures possessing both poison and control abilities were highly sought after. Unfortunately, their current condition made them almost worthless. In fact, he would consider himself fortunate to receive 150,000 Federation coins for both combined. After hearing this, Yuan finally revealed his intentions. He wanted the 2 web-spraying spiders. However, instead of paying cash, he proposed a trade. Brater Yang smiled helplessly. Once he sold the remaining creatures, he intended to rebuild his breeding business from the ground up. Spirit creatures themselves weren't necessarily what he needed most. For a moment, he assumed Yuan was simply another optimistic youngster with unrealistic expectations. Then Yuan asked a single question. What if the trade involved elite-grade green creepers? The moment those words left his mouth, Brother Yang froze. His expression changed instantly. The casual attitude vanished completely. Staring directly at Yuan, he asked for confirmation. Was he seriously offering elite grade green creepers in exchange for the injured spirit creatures? And if so, where exactly had he obtained such valuable spirit plants? Brother Yang's interest was immediately piqued when Yuan mentioned elite grade green creepers. He quickly asked about their quality, wanting to know whether they truly met elite grade standards. Yuan remained completely confident. He assured Brother Yang that the quality would not disappoint him and invited him to visit his home personally to inspect the plants before making any final judgment. Brother Yang understood the value of such spirit plants better than most people. Elite grade green creepers were extremely difficult to obtain. Whenever one appeared on the market, sellers often demanded prices far above normal value. In many cases, buyers were willing to pay nearly double the standard market rate just to secure them. After thinking for a moment, Brother Yang decided to show Yuan the final spirit creature remaining in his collection. According to him, this beast represented years of effort and care. It was a creature into which he had poured tremendous resources and attention. The spirit beast was a rhino rock ox, a member of the bovidae and bison family. It was an elite grade level 10 earth-type spirit creature with epic quality. The creature possessed two notable abilities. The first skill was rock horns. By coating its horns with hardened stone energy, it could launch a powerful charge attack. The technique was aggressive and reckless, sacrificing safety in exchange for overwhelming force. Its second skill was sacrifice. Whenever its contractors suffered damage, the rhino rock ox could willingly bear a portion of the injury itself. This rare defensive ability made it exceptionally valuable as a protector. The moment Yuan reviewed the creature's information, his eyes lit up. This was exactly the kind of spirit beast he had been searching for. An epic quality defensive type creature nearing copper rank was incredibly difficult to find. More importantly, its abilities suited Xiao Shui perfectly. Without hesitation, Yuan asked about the price. Brother Yang looked surprised. The rhino rock ox was heavily injured, and its condition remained unstable. Most buyers avoided such creatures because of the risks involved. Yet Yuan seemed genuinely interested. When Yuan offered 200,000 Federation coins, Brother Yang immediately became curious. He wondered whether Yuan possessed some method of healing the creature. Considering the mysterious elite grade green creepers and Yuan's extensive knowledge, he began suspecting that a powerful creator might be supporting him behind scenes. After a brief discussion, Brother Yang finally confirmed the deal. Yuan intended to take all three injured spirit creatures, including the two web-spraying spiders and the rhino rock ox. In exchange, Brother Yang would inspect the elite grade green creepers. Yuan confidently promised that the plants would exceed expectations. Smarty immediately backed him up, proudly declaring that Yuan never lied. Those words seemed to reassure Brother Yang. Since the agreement was nearly settled, he decided to pack up his stall and travel with Yuan to inspect the spirit plants personally. Fortunately, he had a spirit lockbox available. Taking out the device, he tossed it onto the ground. The small container instantly expanded into a much larger storage box. Smarty stared in amazement and immediately asked what it was. Brother Yang explained that the item was a spirit lockbox, a patented invention commonly used for transporting spirit creatures. The box could safely store living creatures inside. Its internal space automatically adjusted to accommodate different sizes, while special functions greatly reduced weight and made transportation much easier. Smarty was stunned. The invention sounded incredibly convenient. He couldn't understand why they had never used one before. Yuan simply smiled and explained the obvious reason. Their family had never possessed enough spare money to purchase expensive equipment like that. Soon afterward, the massive rhino rock ox entered the box. Watching such a large creature disappear into the compact container left Smarty completely speechless. Even after seeing it happen with his own eyes, he could barely believe it. Brother Yang sighed softly. Looking at the rhino rock ox, he felt genuine regret. Under normal circumstances, the creature would have advanced into copper rank in the near future. Unfortunately, fate had not been kind. After storing the ox, Brother Yang released his own contracted spirit creature. A large tumor-crowned fire lizard appeared beside him. The beast belonged to a horned lizard species and had already reached copper rank 7. Although its quality was only normal, it remained an impressive creature. The lizard possessed several dangerous abilities. Its first skill, shedding fangs, allowed it to leave detached teeth embedded inside an opponent during a bite attack. Its second skill, death roll, activated after securing a bite. The creature would violently rotate its body, using tremendous force to tear flesh and bone from its target. Most impressive of all was its exclusive trait known as burning venom. Specialized poison glands connected directly to its saliva, allowing every bite to inject a toxin that caused intense burning pain and lingering damage. The large lizard immediately moved toward Brother Yang and affectionately rubbed against him. The bond between spirit beast and contractor was obvious. Brother Yang proudly introduced the creature and asked whether Yuan found it impressive. Yuan nodded honestly. This was his first opportunity to closely observe a copper-rank spirit creature. The burning venom trait alone provided a tremendous offensive advantage and demonstrated how dangerous evolved spirit beasts could become. Brother Yang looked increasingly impressed by the young man's knowledge. Most people could identify basic abilities. Very few could analyze spirit creatures with such depth and accuracy. In his opinion, Yuan either possessed extraordinary natural talent or had been taught by an exceptional master. Their conversation was interrupted when nearby vendors began shouting complaints. The sudden appearance of the copper-rank lizard had frightened several weaker spirit creatures in neighboring stalls. One merchant complained that his tough hide rabbit had become too scared to eat. Another reported similar problems with a fairy monkey. Realizing the disturbance he had caused, Brother Yang quickly apologized. He promised that they would leave immediately. A short time later, Yuan, Smarty, and Brother Yang climbed onto the tumor-crowned fire lizard. The creature accelerated forward at remarkable speed. Compared to traditional donkey carts, the difference was enormous. The journey that would normally take much longer passed quickly. Eventually, they arrived at Yuan's home. Looking around, Brother Yang remarked that the location was much closer than he had expected. He also complimented Yuan's composure. Most people became dizzy or nauseous during their first ride on a fast copper-rank spirit creature. Although both Yuan and Smarty looked somewhat pale, they had endured the trip surprisingly well. Yuan sincerely thanked him for the experience. After all, it was the first time he had ever ridden a copper-rank spirit beast. Opening the door, Yuan welcomed his guest inside. At the same time, he modestly warned that the house was rather simple and lacked anything impressive. Brother Yang quietly observed the surroundings as he entered. The residence was clean but ordinary. Nothing about it resembled the secluded home of a powerful creator. And that only made Yuan seem even more mysterious. The moment Brother Yang saw the green creepers growing in Yuan's backyard, every remaining doubt disappeared from his mind. Before arriving, he had been prepared for disappointment. Business was business, and no matter how much potential he believed Yuan possessed, he had no intention of accepting inferior goods. If the promised green creepers failed to meet expectations, their agreement would end immediately. However, the reality before him completely shattered those concerns. The green creepers were far beyond anything he had imagined. Their leaves were vibrant and full of vitality. Their stems were thick and healthy. Most importantly, the spirit energy contained within each plant was astonishingly rich. As an experienced breeder, Brother Yang immediately recognized their value. There was simply no way ordinary cultivation methods could produce green creepers of this quality. In his eyes, only a skilled creator could nurture plants to such an extraordinary level. The more he inspected them, the more convinced he became. These weren't merely elite-grade green creepers. They were among the finest elite-grade green creepers he had ever seen. Even on StarNet, where merchants from countless regions competed daily, specimens of this quality were extremely rare. Most traders would fight fiercely for the opportunity to acquire them. What Brother Yang didn't know was that before evolving the green creepers, Yuan had continuously enriched the soil with concentrated spirit energy. As a result, the plants had developed exceptionally strong root systems. Their foundations far exceeded those of ordinary specimens. When Brother Yang carefully examined a freshly cut section, he noticed that the sap flowing from the plant was dense with spirit energy. The sight immediately confirmed his judgment. Yuan had not exaggerated even slightly. These truly were top-tier, elite-grade green creepers. For the first time in a long while, Brother Yang felt genuine hope. After suffering numerous losses because of the dimensional rift disaster, he had begun questioning whether his luck would ever improve. Now, however, it felt as though fortune had finally returned to his side. His thoughts drifted toward a memory from years earlier. At that time, he had attempted to seek help from a respected master creator. Unfortunately, obtaining assistance from such individuals required rare spirit materials as payment. People of his status rarely possessed treasures valuable enough to attract their attention. In the end, he had left empty-handed. Now, standing before these remarkable green creepers. He couldn't help suspecting that a powerful creator was secretly supporting Yuan. Because of that, he quietly decided that maintaining a good relationship with the young man would be extremely beneficial. After finishing his inspection, Yuan finally asked the question he had been waiting to hear. "Are you satisfied?" "Brother Yang Lao Get." Satisfied was an understatement. He was thrilled. Nodding enthusiastically, he admitted that the plans had exceeded every expectation. Now it was time to discuss business. After a moment of thought, he stated his evaluation. Each green creeper could easily sell for around 30,000 Federation coins on StarNet. Demand would be incredibly high. In fact, they would likely sell out almost immediately. His proposal was straightforward. He wanted 100 pots. For each pot, he offered 30,000 Federation coins. The numbers were so large that Smarty nearly fell over from shock. The little cat immediately began trying to calculate the total value. The more he calculated, the more unbelievable the figure seemed. Meanwhile, Yuan remained calm. Without hesitation, he accepted the offer. His reaction surprised Brother Yang. Most people would become excited during negotiations involving such a large amount of money. Yuan, however, behaved as though it were an ordinary transaction. The calmness only reinforced Brother Yang's growing belief that someone influential stood behind him. Perhaps the modest shop and ordinary clothing were merely disguises. Perhaps the mysterious creator supporting him preferred remaining hidden. Whatever the truth, Brother Yang felt increasingly convinced that Yuan's background was far more extraordinary than it appeared. After agreeing on the purchase, Brother Yang asked how long it would take to prepare the full order. Yuan quickly performed the calculations in his mind. Each green creeper required considerable attention. He also needed time for rest and other responsibilities. After considering everything carefully, he settled on an answer. 7 days. Brother Yang immediately agreed. To him, waiting a week was insignificant compared to the profit he expected to earn. In fact, the entire situation felt like a blessing. What had initially seemed like another disappointing day had unexpectedly transformed into a tremendous opportunity. Once the arrangements were finalized, Brother Yang prepared to leave. Before departing, he asked whether Yuan wanted a deposit for the remaining plants. After all, the transaction involved an enormous amount of money. Most merchants would insist on advance payment. Yuan simply shook his head. There was no need. They could settle everything when the order was collected. His confidence impressed Brother Yang even further. With a final promise to return in 7 days, he departed. As soon as the guest left, Yuan turned his attention toward a much more urgent matter. The Rhino Rock Ox. The massive spirit beast was placed in the backyard. Its condition remained critical. Although the transaction had succeeded, saving the creature was far more important than discussing money. In curiously flew around the giant beast. She asked whether it would be living with them permanently. Smarty immediately pointed out that they could barely afford to support themselves, let alone such a large spirit creature. Yuan smiled faintly. Before discussing long-term plans, they first needed to save its life. The Rhino Rock Ox had already reached its limit. Every moment mattered. Without wasting time, Yuan activated his abilities and began channeling spirit energy into the injured beast. Slowly, the creature's damaged body started recovering. Its wounds gradually stabilized. Its vitality improved. After confirming that the treatment was effective, Yuan increased the flow of energy. The process accelerated dramatically. Soon, the Rhino Rock Ox began releasing deep roars. Its body trembled violently. A strange crystalline shell started forming around it. The phenomenon immediately caught Yuan's attention. After observing carefully, he realized what was happening. The beast wasn't merely healing. It was advancing. The injuries that had trapped it for so long had finally been removed. Now, years of accumulated energy were pushing it toward the next stage of evolution. The crystalline layer surrounding its body resembled a barrier separating one rank from another. If the barrier could be broken, the creature would successfully enter copper rank. The process continued for hours. Afternoon gradually became evening. Evening eventually gave way to night. Yet neither Yuan nor the Rhino Rock Ox stopped. Again and again, powerful energy surged against the invisible wall. Each attempt produced new cracks. Each crack brought the beast closer to success. Finally, deep into the night, the barrier shattered. A powerful wave of spirit energy exploded outward. The breakthrough had succeeded. The Rhino Rock Ox completed its evolution and transformed into an iron-horned Rhino Ox. Its appearance became significantly more imposing. Its horns gleamed with metallic luster. Its physique grew stronger and more refined. Most importantly, it had officially entered copper rank. The newly evolved spirit beast belonged to the giant horn family and possessed copper rank level 1 strength. Its primary attribute shifted toward metal affinity. Its abilities evolved alongside it. Rock horns transformed into a more powerful version that coated its horns with reinforced metallic energy before launching devastating charges. The sacrifice skill remained intact, preserving its ability to absorb damage on behalf of its contractor. However, the most important choice still remained. An exclusive trait awaited selection. The first option was scaled hide. This trait would cover the creature's body with armor-like scales formed from the same material as its skin, greatly increasing defensive capabilities. The second option was tireless trek. This trait specialized in stamina conservation, allowing the beast to travel long distances while consuming far less energy. The final option was pain siphon. This remarkable trait allowed the creature to absorb a portion of incoming damage and convert that suffering into life force, effectively improving its survivability during prolonged battles. Yuan carefully examined all three choices. The decision was not simple. Tireless trek was immediately eliminated from consideration. While useful for transportation or endurance-based creatures, it offered little value to a dedicated defensive spirit beast. The remaining two options were far more difficult. Scaled hide would dramatically increase physical defense. Pain siphon, on the other hand, offered extraordinary sustainability during combat. Both possessed tremendous value. Standing beneath the night sky, Yuan stared at the waiting evolution options. The future of Xiao Shue's spirit beast could be influenced by the decision he made next, and he intended to choose wisely. After carefully comparing the available options, Yuan finally made his decision. The scale hide trait was undoubtedly useful. The additional armor would significantly strengthen the iron-horned rhino ox's defenses. During a charging attack, the hardened scales could even inflict extra damage on opponents that came into contact with its body. However, the more Yuan analyzed the choices, the more attractive pain siphon became. This exclusive trait allowed the spirit creature to absorb a portion of the damage it suffered and convert that damage into vitality. In simple terms, the harder the creature was pressured during battle, the more opportunities it had to recover itself. For a defensive spirit beast, the ability was incredibly valuable. Instead of merely enduring attacks, it could actually benefit from them. The trait transformed the iron-horned rhino ox into a relentless frontline fighter. Combined with rock horns, it could continuously launch powerful charges while recovering through pain siphon. The two abilities complemented each other perfectly, creating a cycle where the beast became increasingly difficult to wear down. Without hesitation, Yuan selected pain siphon. The evolution was completed immediately. As he examined the final results, satisfaction appeared on his face. On paper, the iron-horned rhino ox looked like a defensive spirit creature. In reality, it was something far more dangerous. With proper training, it could become an offensive powerhouse disguised as a tank. For Xiao Shui, it was the perfect first contract beast. The creature possessed outstanding survivability, reliable protection abilities, and enough offensive power to discourage most opponents from even approaching her. Yuan felt reassured. With a partner like this, Xiao Shui would be much safer moving forward. Smarty, however, had a completely different opinion. Looking at the elegant Xiao Shui and imagining her standing beside the enormous armored beast, he joked that they would become the ultimate beauty and beast combination. Yuan simply rolled his eyes. Appearance meant nothing to him. Safety was what mattered. Besides, he quickly reminded Smarty that he was technically a beast as well. The little cat immediately became speechless. While observing the newly evolved creature, Yuan suddenly noticed another change. A wave of spiritual energy surged through his body. His spiritual power had increased once again. The feedback was even stronger than before. It seemed that the higher the rank of the spirit creature he evolved, the greater the energy returned to him. Unfortunately, the process had nearly exhausted him. Helping a spirit creature break in a copper rank consumed an enormous amount of strength. Yuan couldn't help wondering what kind of spiritual growth a top creator would experience after evolving powerful creatures using legendary treasures and rare resources. The thought alone was astonishing. Meanwhile, Smarty was still drenched in saliva after being enthusiastically licked by the iron-horned rhino ox. Shaking the moisture from his fur, he asked how Yuan planned to send such a massive spirit creature to Xiao Shui. Yuan had already made arrangements. Now that he finally had some money available, he decided to use ostrich logistics. To save time, He paid for express transportation. The logistics company would arrive soon to collect the spirit beast and deliver it directly. The moment Smarty heard about transportation services involving flying creatures, he became excited. He immediately wanted to join. Ever since seeing Een fly freely through the sky, he had dreamed of experiencing flight himself. Unfortunately, that wish was denied almost instantly. Earlier, he had already thrown a dramatic tantrum when informed that he couldn't come along. Fortunately, Een managed to calm him down by carrying him through the air for a short while. In the end, Yuan promised to bring back something delicious as compensation. Only then did Smarty reluctantly accept reality. Not long afterward, Yuan boarded the transportation flight. The driver noticed his pale expression and asked whether he was feeling all right. He reassured Yuan that the ride would become much smoother once they climbed above the clouds. Yuan forced a smile. At that moment, he was doing everything possible to suppress the urge to vomit. The driver chuckled. Apparently, many first-time passengers reacted similarly. Since cargo space was already overloaded, they hadn't been able to bring additional spirit creatures aboard. Otherwise, even Smarty could have come along. Yuan nodded. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Eventually, the flight reached cruising altitude. The breathtaking scenery immediately captured his attention. Moonlight reflected across winding rivers below. Mountains stretched endlessly across the horizon. The entire world appeared peaceful and mysterious from such a great height. For a moment, Yuan forgot about his discomfort. The view truly felt unforgettable. Then something unusual happened. Deep within his sea of consciousness, a strange energy began gathering. At first, Yuan thought he was imagining things. However, the sensation quickly intensified. The energy condensed into a distinct symbol. A will rune. His eyes widened in shock. A will rune represented an individual's understanding of a fundamental concept within nature. Spiritqi professionals spent years attempting to comprehend them. Many talented cultivators never succeeded. Yet one was now forming naturally within his consciousness. Carefully examining it, Yuan sensed vast mountains and flowing rivers contained within the rune. The concept it represented was clear. Mountains and rivers. Holding the newly formed rune within his consciousness, he finally became certain. He had truly comprehended a will rune. Immediately, countless possibilities entered his mind. Different spirit creatures possessed varying compatibilities with different runes. Some would gain tremendous benefits from a mountains and rivers concept. Others would receive little value. Yuan began considering potential future applications when the driver's voice interrupted his thoughts. Concerned by his sudden silence, the man asked whether everything was all right. Yuan quickly reassured him. Afterward, he asked how much longer remained before reaching Violet Thorn City. They had already been flying for quite some time. To his surprise, the driver explained that they wouldn't arrive until morning. Yuan frowned. Originally, they had expected to arrive before dawn. The driver awkwardly admitted that he had reduced speed earlier because Yuan seemed extremely uncomfortable during the beginning of the journey. Rather than risk making the situation worse, he had slowed the flight considerably. Realizing the cause of the delay, Yuan felt slightly embarrassed. He immediately told the driver not to worry about him. Maximum speed was fine. The driver laughed and increased the pace. The flying mount surged forward through the night sky. Far away, preparations were already underway at the academy. Students gathered on the training grounds with expressions full of confusion. Today was supposed to be the day they contracted their first spirit creatures. Instead, the schedule had suddenly changed. Rumors spread quickly through the crowd. According to several students, the academy had moved practical combat training much earlier than usual. The reason seemed connected to a special selection process known as Violet Thorn City's 100 Suns program. Apparently, educational schedules across multiple academies had been adjusted to identify exceptionally talented young Spiritqi professionals as early as possible. Whether the rumors were true or not, nobody could say for certain. Eventually, a teacher stepped forward and silenced the crowd. He explained that after completing their spirit creature contracts, students would immediately participate in practical combat exercises. This would serve as both a training lesson and an introduction to real spirit beast battles. To help first-year students gain experience, they would be paired against third-year students in practice matches. The battles would allow them to familiarize themselves with their newly contracted spirit creatures and learn how to utilize their abilities under actual combat conditions. The announcement instantly caused excitement to spread across the training grounds. The day that was supposed to focus solely on contracts had suddenly become far more interesting. As the battle continued, many spectators believed the outcome had already been decided. The Strength King Beetle was famous throughout the academy for its explosive attacks and overwhelming charging power. Countless students had watched it defeat opponents with a single devastating strike. Facing such an experienced third-year student seemed like an impossible challenge for a first-year who had only just formed a contract with her spirit beast. Yet Xiao Shui remained focused. Although she was nervous, she refused to back down. Earlier, one of her classmates had admitted being nervous about the upcoming contracts and asked whether she truly intended to choose a gray beetle. Xiao Shui had calmly answered yes. At the time, she had been prepared to fight with whatever spirit creature she could obtain. Winning or losing was secondary. What mattered was giving her best effort. When the practical combat session began, the difference in experience between first-year and third-year students quickly became obvious. One battle after another ended in decisive victories for the seniors. In one match, a blunt armor pig relentlessly chased down a smaller spirit creature. The frightened gliding squirrel fled across the battlefield, resulting in an easy victory for the third-year student. Many first years immediately complained. The situation felt unfair. They had only just formed contracts with their spirit creatures, while their opponents already possessed years of practical combat experience. The gap seemed impossible to overcome. Soon, it was Xiao Shui's turn. As one of the most talented students in the first-year class, many of her classmates placed their hopes on her. If anyone could restore some pride to the first years, it would be her. The teacher announced the 9th battle and asked both participants whether they were ready. The third-year student answered confidently. The moment the student saw him, several immediately recognized his identity. His name was Feng Lixing. Not only was he an experienced combat student, but his family also possessed connections within the Creator Association. He was currently participating in the selection process for Violet Thorn City's 100 Sons and needed only a few more victories to improve his standing. From Li Xing's perspective, the situation was ideal. The previous night, he had received exciting news regarding opportunities connected to the Creator Association. His ambitions had grown even larger. Not only did he hope to earn a place among Violet Thorn City's elite young talents, but he also dreamed of eventually attracting the attention of the legendary Moon Empress herself. Now he found himself facing a group of inexperienced first years. To him, they looked like easy victories. He had even heard rumors that Xiao Shui intended to contract a gray beetle. If that information was true, she stood absolutely no chance. However, Xiao Shui had no intention of surrendering. Even if all she possessed was a humble gray beetle, she would still fight with everything she had. Just as she was preparing to signal that she was ready, a familiar voice suddenly called out. Everyone turned toward the sky. A large flying creature descended rapidly toward the academy. Moments later, Yuan landed nearby. The arrival immediately drew attention from students and teachers alike. Yuan quickly thanked Xiao Shui's teacher for her concern and explained that he had personally brought the spirit creature he had prepared for his sister. Xiao Shui's eyes widened with surprise. She hadn't expected her brother to appear in person. Yuan smiled and told her that he had arrived just in time. More importantly, he urged her to trust him and complete the contract. Although the teacher appreciated his confidence, she remained cautious. After all, she had already prepared an alternative spirit creature, an elite grade yellow-spotted dog. While not particularly obedient, it was still a safer option than taking unnecessary risks. Before anyone could continue the discussion, Li Xing burst into laughter. To him, the entire situation was meaningless. Whether Xiao Shui used a gray beetle, a yellow-spotted dog, or some other spirit creature made no difference. His Strength King beetle would crush them all. The beetle was already a copper rank level 1 spirit creature from the Scarabaeity line. It possessed powerful abilities such as Giant Horn Ram and Valiant Charge. It also carried an exclusive trait known as Insect Observation, allowing it to detect and see through the camouflage of lower-ranked spirit creatures. Even Xiao Shui's teacher became nervous when she saw the massive insect. Its reputation was well-deserved. Against such an opponent, even the yellow-spotted dog would likely fall in a single attack. Meanwhile, Xiao Shui stared at the spirit lockbox brought by her brother. She couldn't help wondering where their family had suddenly obtained enough money to purchase such expensive equipment. For a moment, she even suspected that Yuan had sold the family shop. Yuan immediately told her not to overthink things. Right now, the battle was what mattered. Xiao Shui nodded seriously. She promised herself that she would not waste the effort her brother had invested for her sake. Taking a deep breath, she released the spirit creature. The contract formation completed instantly. Gasps erupted throughout the training grounds. Many students had never seen anything like it before. The creature's enormous frame, metallic skin, and imposing horns immediately attracted attention. Even Li Xing admitted that its appearance was impressive. Still, he remained completely confident. No matter how intimidating it looked, combat experience remained on his side. In his eyes, Xiao Shue's family had likely spent a fortune acquiring a large iron ox that was destined to lose. Xiao Shue answered calmly. The battle wasn't over yet. No one could predict the outcome before the fight concluded. Without hesitation, she ordered the iron-horned rhino ox to activate rock horns. The teacher's eyes widened immediately. The creature was not merely a copper-ranked spirit beast. Its evolutionary transformation was remarkably complete. Among defensive copper-ranked spirit creatures, it could easily be considered one of the finest examples available. Even its horn alone possessed extraordinary value. Yuan quickly reminded her not to evaluate everything purely in terms of money. The teacher laughed awkwardly and admitted that professional habits were difficult to break. At that moment, the iron-horned rhino ox charged forward. Its horn collided directly with the horn of the Strength King beetle. The impact echoed across the battlefield. Li Xing Spiritqi. In his opinion, Xiao Shue had made a rookie mistake. Charging head-on against a power assault-type spirit creature was foolish. He immediately ordered Giant Horn Ram. The Strength King beetle unleashed its full strength. Xiao Shue responded by commanding the rhino ox to stand its ground. The two creatures clashed once again. He understood exactly what his sister was doing. This wasn't recklessness. It was information gathering. By engaging directly, she was testing her opponent's strength and observing its abilities. Soon, the Strength King beetle began running in wide circles around the rhino ox. Many students looked confused. They couldn't understand what the insect was doing. Li Xing secretly mocked their ignorance. To an experienced fighter, the answer was obvious. A power assault-type spirit creature moved like that only when searching for the perfect opportunity to deliver a decisive strike. The moment finally arrived. The beetle launched forward. Dust exploded across the battlefield. Visibility vanished almost instantly. Students watched nervously through the smoke. The charge looked unstoppable. Many spectators assumed the iron-horned rhino ox had already lost. Even the teacher feared the worst. The Strength King beetle's reputation for devastating one-hit attacks was famous throughout the school. No matter how sturdy the rhino ox was, it seemed impossible for a newly contracted spirit beast to survive such relentless pressure. Complaints once again spread among the first years. Making inexperienced students fight third years felt completely unfair. However, Yuan remained calm. Unlike everyone else, he knew exactly why he had chosen a particular trait during the rhino ox's evolution. Inside the smoke-filled battlefield, Xiao Shue's voice rang out clearly. It is time. At her command, the iron-horned rhino ox activated Pain Siphon. The moment Pain's siphon activated, confusion spread throughout the audience. A strange change occurred around the iron-horned rhino ox. Spiritqi began circulating through its body, and the injuries it had accumulated during the battle started recovering at a visible rate. Many students stared in disbelief. Some wondered whether this healing ability was one of its skills. Others had never seen anything like it before. The teacher, however, immediately recognized what was happening. Her eyes widened with excitement as she explained that Pain Siphon was an extremely rare, exclusive trait. It allowed the spirit creature to absorb part of the damage it received and transform that damage into vitality. In simple terms, the more punishment it endured, the harder it became to bring down. Yuan couldn't help feeling proud. This was Xiao Shue's very first practical combat class, and her first battle with the iron-horned rhino ox. Yet despite her lack of experience, she had remained calm and steadily taken control of the situation. On the opposite side of the field, Li Xing refused to be intimidated. In his eyes, the rhino ox was nothing more than a slightly tougher target. He loudly declared that regardless of how durable it was still just a punching bag. Immediately, he ordered the Strength King beetle to continue its assault. The insect obeyed without hesitation. Again and again, it launched powerful attacks. Each impact sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The spectators watched in amazement. Despite suffering repeated strikes, the iron-horned rhino ox showed no signs of weakening. Its vitality remained surprisingly stable. Even so, it continued taking damage. The teacher glanced toward Yuan and asked whether the creature possessed any counterattacking skills at all. Watching Xiao Shui absorb attack after attack without striking back was making her nervous. Yuan simply smiled. He reminded her that she had previously said Xiao Shui had a natural affinity for defensive spirit creatures. If that was true, then she undoubtedly had a plan. He trusted his sister completely. Meanwhile, Li Xing was growing impatient. He no longer wanted to drag the battle out. Pointing toward the field, he ordered the Strength King beetle to finish everything with a single decisive blow. The beetle immediately prepared Giant Horn Ram. Powerful spirit qi gathered around its body as it charged forward with all of its strength. At the same moment, Xiao Shui issued a command. The iron-horned rhino ox activated rock horns. To the surprise of everyone watching, it slammed its power directly into the battlefield itself. Chunks of earth erupted upward. Stone formations began appearing across the arena. Many students were stunned. Some even questioned whether such a tactic was allowed. Yuan, however, was thrilled. Rather than fighting the enemy directly, Xiao Shui had adapted to the environment and turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. It was a brilliant decision. Li Xing, on the other hand, became irritated. He accused her of relying on cheap tricks and immediately ordered the Strength King beetle to smash through every obstacle in its path. The beetle surged forward. Rock fragments exploded in every direction. Dust filled the air. Yet Xiao Shui remained calm. She continued commanding the iron-horned rhino ox to use rock horns repeatedly. Soon, the two spirit creatures collided once more. Their horns crashed together with tremendous force. The impact shook the battlefield. Many students could hardly believe what they were seeing. The massive rhino ox had actually withstood the Strength King beetle's full power attack. For a brief moment, the two appeared evenly matched. Still, experienced observers could tell that the Strength King beetle maintained a slight advantage. The teacher quickly explained the reason. Giant Horn Ram was a self-sacrificing offensive skill. It focused entirely on maximizing destructive power without regard for the user's own safety. Each collision damaged not only the rhino ox, but also the beetle itself. Furthermore, Li Xing had clearly raised his Strength King beetle according to a highly specialized training method. Everything about the insect emphasized attack power, aggression, and offensive pressure. The strategy worked wonderfully against weaker opponents. However, it carried a major weakness. It assumed battles would end quickly. Defensive opponents capable of surviving the initial assault could potentially drag the fight into unfavorable territory. Yuan understood this perfectly. High offense training methods were designed to dominate opponents through overwhelming force. But when that force failed to secure victory immediately, problems began appearing. As the battle continued, the audience suddenly noticed something unexpected. The Strength King beetle stumbled. Several students immediately assumed it was simply bad luck. The teacher shook her head. It wasn't luck at all. She explained that insect-type spirit creatures naturally possessed disadvantages during prolonged contests of strength. Compared to the heavy and stable physique of the iron-horned rhino ox, the beetle's body structure was far less suited for sustained physical clashes. There was another factor as well. The mental state of the contractor directly influenced the spirit creature. As Li Xing grew increasingly frustrated, his beetle's performance began suffering. Everything happening on the battlefield was textbook knowledge. Unfortunately, many students only understood theory and had never witnessed it in practice before. Li Xing's frustración intensifía. First, a mere first-year student had somehow acquired a copper-rank spirit creature. Now that same spirit creature was blocking the attacks of his prized Strength King beetle. The situation felt incredibly unfair. To him, it seemed as though fate itself was working against him. Determined to regain control, he ordered the beetle to retreat temporarily. The Strength King beetle leapt backward and created some distance. Then, instead of targeting the rhino ox, it suddenly changed direction and rushed directly toward Xiao Shui. The crowd gasped. Even the teacher immediately protested. Attacking the contractor directly violated the spirit of the exercise. Yuan's expression tightened. He silently hoped Xiao Shui would react in time. Fortunately, she remained composed. Without panicking, she issued another command. The iron-horned rhino ox slammed its power into the ground once more. Using rock horns, it reshaped the terrain and raised stone ridges across the battlefield. The charging beetle failed to adjust in time. It crashed directly into one of the newly formed obstacles. The impact sent it tumbling uncontrollably. Moments later, It rolled all the way to the edge of the field. Silence filled the arena. Then the referee announced the result. The match was over. Xiao Shui had won. Shock appeared on Li Xing's face. He stood frozen in place, unable to believe what had happened. Meanwhile, the first-year students erupted into celebration. At last, someone from their grade had defeated a third-year opponent. The teacher finally understood Xiao Shui's strategy. The repeated use of rock horns had never been about direct offense. It was preparation. Each use altered the battlefield little by little until enough terrain had accumulated to create the final trap. The victory wasn't accidental. It had been planned from the beginning. As the realization spread, the teacher happily slapped Yuan on the back and praised him for finding such an outstanding spirit creature. Yuan nearly stumbled forward. Laughing awkwardly, he asked her to calm down because her strength was surprisingly impressive. A moment later, Xiao Shui ran over and threw her arms around her brother. Yuan congratulated her on the victory. Instead of celebrating, she immediately began questioning him. Where had the money come from? Had he sold the family shop? What about his health? If all their savings had been spent, what would happen to his treatment? The questions poured out one after another. More than anything, she was worried about him. Yuan reassured her. The shop was still theirs. His condition had improved. Business was actually doing better than ever. The teacher wanted to give him more time, but schedules were tight. She quickly explained the academy's decision. Because of her performance and talent, Xiao Shui would be recommended directly for the preliminary selection process of Violet Thorn City's 100 Suns program. This regional competition represented the first step toward qualifying for the prestigious 100 Suns selection of the Radiant Federation. Although Xiao Shui was only a first-year student, her abilities had already earned recognition. The academy intended to devote significant educational resources to her development. Yuan sincerely thanked the teacher for supporting his sister. In return, he promised that he would do everything possible to provide Xiao Shui with the best spirit creature resources available. The teacher smiled. Helping talented students grow was part of her responsibility. Afterward, she suggested that since Xiao Shui had no classes that afternoon, she could show her brother around the academy. The siblings happily spent time together, eating snacks and exploring the campus. During their conversation, Xiao Shui remained skeptical about her brother's sudden success. To prove he was telling the truth, Yuan showed her his bank account. The moment she saw the balance, her eyes widened dramatically. There were far more zeros than she expected. Yuan explained that after recovering his Spiritqi abilities, he had discovered a talent for creator work. By taking commissions and applying his skills, he had earned a considerable amount of money. He encouraged her to stop worrying about supporting the family and focus entirely on her studies and future competitions. When he revealed that he also intended to take the creator certification examination, Xiao Shui became genuinely happy for him. To celebrate, Yuan asked what she wanted to eat. Her answer came instantly. Hot pot. Yuan laughed and agreed immediately. As they enjoyed their meal together, both siblings felt optimistic about the future. For the first time in a long while, everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. Subscribe and like for part 2.